Short trip. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee meeting. All of the committee members are here, and we have 4 consent items and 6 general agenda items. Councilmember Clark would like to pull C3, and I am pulling C1. Are there any others?
Move approval on the balance.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda. You okay? May we have a vote, please? If you're in favor, vote yes. Not, vote no. And it passes. Thank you very much. City Clerk, would you please call the...
Item C1, information on required American Rescue Plan Act Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund policies.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, Mayor Joines, members of the committee and council. The item, it's really close.
Could I get your name?
Yes, ma'am. John Lawson.
And what you do?
I am.
I know who you are, but the audience might say, who is that guy?
John Lawson from the city attorney's office.
Thank you.
The item before you today, informational item, has 5 policies attached that are required for the city to enact as a result of its receiving the ARPA money. The Treasury adopted its final rule that became effective in April of 2022, and as a result of that final rule becoming effective, these policies had to be in place, basically so that the city can say that it's following these policies for the money that it is spending and has spent from ARPA. These 5 policies that are attached as to the item, and I can give you a brief summary if you'd like.
Please.
I figured you would say that.
Only me.
So the 5 policies, they're templates that the school of government put out. They're model policies recommended for all the cities and counties that receive the ARPA money to enact. I'll go through them all. As I said, if you have any questions about any of the policies in particular, or just the process in general, I'm happy to attempt to answer them. And if I don't know the answer, then I'm sure Tiffany does. So the first policy is the record retention policy. The city is already subject to numerous record retention requirements that come from the state through its Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. The council has adopted those. They have varying lengths of time that the city has to hold on to stuff. This ARPA, all the projects that are funded by ARPA have a 5-year requirement. So 5 years after the money has been spent, the city has to hold on to all documents that were created through that before they can be disposed of. So that policy basically just, in essence, says that the city's going to hold all those documents for 5 years. The eligible use policy basically says that the city is spending the money on uses that it may spend the money on, the ARPA funds. The sort of broad ones, like anything dealing with the COVID-19 public health expenditures and the negative economic impacts, replacing lost public sector revenue, premium pay, water, sewer, broadband infrastructure investments. Basically, everything that's listed or that the city does has to fit into one of those categories. And we've been doing that already. This just kind of puts that into effect. That kind of confirming that we have a policy in place that says that. Related to that is the allowable costs and cost principles policy. Basically, the city's going to have sound management of its money, of its documents. That the city's going to review everything to make sure that it's an eligible project, that the costs are reasonable, that all the applicants for the projects are consistently treated, that the city documents everything as well. There is an exhibit to that allowable costs and cost principles policy that summarizes selected items, and the have to start over?
That was the White House, you're okay.
So am I done?
It's an Amber Alert, everybody.
Yeah, so the Exhibit A to the allowable costs and cost principles policy does kind of have a list of different items in the different sections in the CFR that show whether they're allowed, not allowed, or allowed in part. You know, those items that are listed, they don't apply to any expenditure that the city makes with regards to its revenue replacement funds, but to the extent that there's non-revenue replacement money that was used, that's what that policy would apply to. There is a a civil rights compliance and non-discrimination policy as well that the city has to enact. You know, the city already has a very broad non-discrimination policy. It's had it in place for about 2.5 years. The one that the federal government requires, or the Treasury requires the city to enact, is less broad. So the city has already been in compliance, you know, with that. There's no overlap, or there's no gaps in coverage. So the city is okay with that. It's just we just have to enact this policy. And then the last one is a conflict of interest policy. You know, the city also already has conflict of interest policy that is applicable to all city employees, all elected officials. You know, basically ensuring that there's no gifts, there's no undue influence, and that kind of thing. And so that policy, the one that is attached, aligns fairly well with the city's policy. The city has a narrower definition of what is considered to be an immediate family member than the conflict of interest policy that the Treasury requires. That one is a little bit more broad in terms of who gets kind of brought into that umbrella as to whether there might be a conflict of interest. There are several exhibits attached to that conflict of interest policy that have template checklists that staff, and when they're evaluating a contractor's eligibility for funds, they can go through that just to make sure that there's not any kind of conflict involved.
Thank you, Attorney Lawson. But one of the things that can happen, and the record retention 5-year is basically a Fed rule across the board on anything federal when it comes to records of finances and money. But we do know over the years we have seen people that misuse, abuse, fraud, whatever you want to call it, government money, especially all of this money that was passed down 2 to 3 years ago. My concern is, again, making sure that we are doing our due diligence and checking a box on a recipient of the funds. To me, that's good, but I truly hope, and staff has heard me say this, that we are actually auditing facilities, programs, showing up somewhere. They don't know we're coming, but somehow or another, we might want to do those occasionally, because I would hate for something to come back and haunt us, and our citizens will be asking the same questions. They're like, so you just accepted the paper or the report, and nobody ever went out to see if they actually are doing what they said they were doing? So that's my suggestion. Ms. Tony, Mr. King, Mr. Rao, and the rest of you, and this attorney, I think we might want to do that or figure out how we get it done with Mr. Tesh's department or whoever's responsible. I do expect more than just us checking boxes. That's just me. Maybe the council is okay, but I think we need to do more. Councilmember Clark. Councilmember Scipio next.
Just a generic question, I'll address it to anyone in this area. Do we have any concerns with any of these? Any surprises, or, because I'm assuming we have,
With recipients?
no, with the,
Policies.
with all the requirements. Did any of them, when you actually got them, say, oops, or we're comfortable with them? And as far as the agencies that we're working with, I'm seeing heads nodding accordingly. We're okay, we think. Okay, thank you.
We think is a big word. Okay, Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. I think early on with this opera money, We knew there were going to be a lot of regulations and requirements. These are the final requirements, correct? And policies.
These are the policies, there was, all the regulations that Treasury has put out, they finally had the final rule that came out last spring. It became effective April 1st of 2022. That kind of triggered the final version of these policies. I mean, the city, Mr. Tesh and I were just kind of discussing this, the city accepted all this money and already agreed that it was going to do all this stuff, but now there's just a matter of actually putting the policy in place as a sort of formality.
I looked through these policies, and most of them have some real defined actions that you can and cannot do. And the city is held accountable to all the money we received. We then passed it on to community agencies, and I think that's what Mayor Pro Tem and Mr. Clark spoke about. We need to make sure that all of the recipients of the monies that we gave have these same policies. Because at the end of the day, they can't come back and say, we didn't know that they were going to be held accountable like this. And some of it's very rigid. So I would hope that we're sending these final policies on to all of the agencies to make sure they get their books in order.
And we may even want to, and then Councilman McIntosh, making sure that, again, government language is government language, trust me. 99% of the country has no idea what any of this says. That we at least give them the policy, but also give them in layman's terms what this means, that they can understand it. Because I see Ms. French back there, Attorney French and Attorney Carmen and you and others, we're government. You guys are the experts, so you understand it. But we find when we deal with even contractors on every level, builders, whatever, people that want services from us, when we give them the paperwork, they don't know what all of that means. So if we could just translate these 5 into language that people can understand, particularly the agencies, the boards of directors, and the directors of the agencies. Ms. Tony, and then Councilman McIntosh.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Adams. I just wanted to point out that the funding, the ARPA funding that we kept in-house is true ARPA. The community agencies is revenue replacement. Tiffany and her staff are definitely making sure the agencies are following our protocols, but we are not tied to the hard policies as Mr. Lawson just laid out, only because it's revenue replacement funding.
Revenue replacement for all of the agencies, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman McIntosh.
I just want to compliment staff for doing the work on the front end. There were groups that had great ideas, but we felt they did not have the capacity to deal with this level of scrutiny and this level of paperwork. And so staff did a bunch of work to make sure that we chose people to partner with that were going to be able to provide the information to us that we needed. So shout out and a thank you to staff on that.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Attorney Lawson, very much. Next item, please.
Item C3, adoption of a resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $20 million in multifamily housing revenue bonds to provide financing for Salem Gardens to satisfy Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code.
Attorney Carmen. I apologize, Mr. Cheshire, I didn't see you.
He just snuck
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Evidently.
Yeah, I snuck in. I don't know if y'all call me up because you like me or because you don't like me, but I've been up here a lot. I'll try to give an overview. We've done this before. Essentially, the private market borrows money, okay, to construct these affordable housing developments. If they borrow that money through the issuance of these bonds and we touch them in concept, meaning the housing authority touches them, those bonds become tax exempt. So the developers are able to borrow at a better rate, right? They're not paying as much interest because they are tax exempt bonds. They go through a lot of different approval processes. Our board has to adopt 3 resolutions before these bonds are issued. We have to hold a TEFRA hearing, which is a public hearing. We held that this morning and received no comments. You all then have to approve it, even though you're not the issuer of the bonds, and then it comes before the local government commission. Usually with these bond deals, there's also involvement with the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, which is the case with respect to this particular deal, where there are 4% bonds. We typically look at 9% bonds, which are competitive. 4% bonds are issued as of right, 4% tax credits are issued as of right when there is when the bond is issued. I didn't say that very articulately, but that guarantees the low-income housing tax credits at the 4% rate when there is what we call private activity bonds. So the takeaway, and I know you've asked about this before, there is no obligation, financial obligation on behalf of either the Housing Authority or the City of Winston-Salem when these bonds are issued. The only guarantor is the borrower, which is to say the developer.
That's correct.
Councilmember Clark.
Who is the developer?
It's a group called Orbac Affordable Housing. They are a nationally known entity. They do this all over the place. They're really good at it. They have their own management team. So one thing that excites me and one reason we're supporting this deal, we all know there have been issues in this community, right? So it's important to do a couple things. Invest in the facilities, which this group is doing to the tune of about $30 million, acquisition plus rehab. That's just north of $70K per door. There will be no displacement. They're doing all this within the site, so no one is displaced. And then there's a new management team coming in. And like I said, this group does this all over the country, primarily with affordable housing, so they know how to do this. Yes, ma'am, Councilmember Scipio. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Councilmember McIntosh, then Councilmember Scipio.
I saw you. Thank you.
You hadn't finished.
I haven't
apologize, Councilmember
I haven't yielded the balance of my time.
Yield. Go ahead.
Do these units currently exist?
Yes, sir.
So this is, and which ward are they in?
James.
East Ward.
East Ward, okay.
On the east.
The East
So
Ward.
this is a rehab?
Yes, sir.
East Ward.
Okay. That's all I need. I yield the balance. Whatever that means.
Okay. Councilman McIntosh.
Kevin, why don't we do more of this? I mean, what
I'd love to.
What are the restrictions? I mean, it seems like, it doesn't tap our pool of funds.
Yep.
Seems like it's working with a great developer, working on a really needy project. How can we amp that up and do more of it?
Yes, sir. I think that's a great question. I'd love to do more. As you've noted numerous times, we can't solve this exclusively in the public sector, so it's got to be public-private partnership in every way possible. This is the second one that we have issued, meaning it's gotten all the way to closing. I think, Councilmember McIntosh, we've done 5 inducement resolutions, which is sort of how these things start. Not all of them end up penciling out and getting to closing, but this will be the second one that has gotten to closing, and I agree with you. I sure would like to do more.
Thanks.
Councilmember Scipio.
So, Mr. Cheshire, these are going to be new owners of Salem Garden?
Yes, ma'am.
Have they already purchased the property?
They have not. All that will happen at one time. There will be a closing of the transaction as well as a financial closing concurrently.
Yeah, and what is the tentative timetable?
The last call I was on, they were hoping for next month. And I think a lot of that depends on how quickly they can get in front of the local government commission and get all the approvals that they need. I will be taking it to my board tomorrow, which will be the last action that is needed on our end. And it'll just be a matter of getting the local government commission's approval and, of course, you all taking action next week.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
I move for approval.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded, and you may vote in favor or against when it comes up. Thank you. And the motion passes. Would the city clerk please call the general agenda items?
Item G1, resolution to establish the need for the creation of a housing trust fund to address the affordable housing needs in the city of Winston-Salem.
Ms. Tony.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Jones, and members of the committee and council. As you are aware, last month or so, the mayor commissioned the staff to look into developing and creating a housing trust fund. He requested that we explore what other cities are doing, and some of us went on some tours. We also spoke with some local cities that are nearby that had created housing trust funds to get some insight on those opportunities. It's a myriad of potential in terms of establishing a trust fund, and so we need more time, but this resolution commits us to just creating or establishing a need to create a trust fund. The mechanics of it take some time. We need to look at self-help potentially, list some other opportunities of who potentially would manage it, be a third party, whether it's internal, external. So there's a lot of decision points that need to be factored in before we create the fund, but we needed some guidance to a way forward to make sure that this is something you all want to establish, and then the city staff would come back with recommendations on the mechanics on how the fund would be administered going forward.
Any comments? Councilmember Clark.
I have no problem with the resolution. It basically just says we need to establish one, fairly vague. I do want to put my 2 cents in on, at some appropriate time in the future, I think we need to have another committee of the whole meeting that'll be up for the mayor to call to go over staff's recommendations on, and this is a big animal we're trying to get our hands around. But I would certainly recommend we do that at a committee of the whole level when staff is ready. I'm not suggesting tomorrow, and this would be part of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Scipio, then Mayor Jones.
Yes. I'm concerned, is this going to be the tool through which we make all decisions on housing, both rehab and new construction?
Well, Councilmember Scipio, currently, this would just establish the need for a fund. The mayor has talked to people about committing and investing in the fund. We have identified some potential internal resources that we could contribute to seed the fund. This does not exhaust all of our funding. So we will continue to get federal funding for CDBG, home. There are various housing sources that we still will have access to. We still have the 2014 TURN money that you and Councilmember Burke has mentioned. That we would not put into this pot. There was some additional 2018 bond funding that is a possibility, and just some kind of different buckets that just have been unused over time. So we could clean up some old bond funding and then look at how do we continue to provide ongoing revenue to the fund going forward. So we can do both, and if that is what the council decides to do.
So today we'll be deciding to establish a fund, but we
Yes.
don't have all of the nuts and bolts and how it will operate, how it will be funded, who will manage and implement that.
That's right.
Is there a thought about what timetable we want to be on to get those things worked out, the details, the nuts and bolts?
Right, and so we wanted to get some confirmation from the city council that this is a way forward, that Housing Trust Fund is a great opportunity for housing opportunities, affordable housing in particular. And so this would take significant staff time to just look at the details, look at what other cities have done, bring back a great recommendation so that we all feel good about the way forward. So, you know, that may take a couple of months, but we didn't want staff doing too much on the front end if this is not voted on to establish the fund, and then we'll come back. So I would imagine in a couple of months, we'll be able to have some recommendations, and if the mayor desires another council member meeting of the whole to flush that out, we can definitely do that as well.
Thank you.
Mayor Jones, and then Councilmember Monday.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, it's an area that's dear to my heart and dear to most of our hearts in terms of affordable housing creation and the need we have it here. I think in looking around, we've seen that our colleague cities, particularly in North Carolina and other places, have had a local housing trust fund that's given them that little extra ability to do deals and to close deals quickly, perhaps. think we talked about when we were putting this together, we might hopefully get out of the bureaucracy of city government as much as
Possible. Thank you, Councilmember. So I'm very much in favor of this. I think this is a good next step. It gets us on record of supporting the creation of the trust fund, and then will allow staff a chance to put together flesh out around the general proposals here. So, Madam Chairman, I'm very much in support of it, and thank you for helping
Thank
push
you.
this forward.
Councilmember Monday, then Councilmember Burke, then Councilmember McIntosh and Larson.
This is more of a request. This is a huge decision that we need to make, housing in general. And, you know, some of us didn't know about these tours that were going on until after the fact in a public meeting. I think it would have been appropriate to include committee members, be a little more inclusive with things like that. And I would request that you as interim city manager make sure that we're not left in the dark like that.
Councilmember Burke.
Thank you. So I have a couple of concerns. I think this is a huge undertaking. We do have very serious affordable housing needs, but I don't think that we're ready this evening to make a decision on whether or not we need to establish this housing trust fund. I believe we need more information. We need more research. We need more detail. We need details. We need more questions answered. Will this be, will it cover rehab as well as new construction? There are too many unanswered questions for us to move forward. We do have needs, but I believe we also have greater needs for more information at this time.
Councilmember McIntosh, then Councilmember Larson.
So I'm torn between being excited about the fact that we're moving towards this and also the need for more information, no doubt. But we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. This week's newspaper, again, had an article about Winston-Salem being the municipality that has the fastest rising housing prices in the state. The longer we wait, the less housing our pool of money buys. And so we may not get everything right, but I think we're going to come to a place where council is going to be happy, but we need to have some sense of urgency behind it. We've studied and studied and studied and watched the cost of housing go up dramatically. So the more we stall, the more it takes money out of our constituents' pockets, mostly on the rental front. That's really where it hurts the most, and those are the people that can least afford the increases in cost. So I'm looking forward to getting into this. I think we can hammer out our details, but I think there needs to be a sense of urgency. Thank you.
Councilmember Larson.
We've been looking under every mattress for a nickel that we can get to give to housing, and I applaud the efforts by the mayor to go to the private sector outside of the normal city coffers to try to come up with additional funds that could go to a designated fund to support the housing effort that the city is undertaking. So I think the idea of creating a fund is a good one. I think we have a lot to work out. You've heard my concern about individual homeowners not being shut out of the process in view of private developers taking all the money and using that. But I'm sure you'll work out those questions. I'll be asking them again as we go along. But I think the idea of establishing this fund is an important part of the process of embracing partnerships with the corporate world outside of the city hall.
Thank you. Councilmember Clark.
Yep. Let me just remind everybody, I'm going to read the last paragraph of this staff summary. It says the tax resolutions establishes the need to create a dedicated and restricted fund for affordable housing and directs staff to further pursue creating options/recommendations for administration, management, eligibility, requirements, policies, procedures, et cetera. All this resolution simply does is give them permission to go do their homework.
To do something.
Do something. So I'm not overly concerned that we are going in the direction A versus direction B. And I'm not even sure why we need this, but staff feels like they need permission to go research this thing further. So if this is all we're doing is directing staff to further pursue creating options and recommendations, et cetera, I think it's a fairly benign request, and I don't have any trouble with it. With that, I'll move approval.
I have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All of the comments by everyone up here is very important, but Ms. Tony and I discussed this morning that, again, as Councilmember Clark said, that this is just, it goes back to us voting to prioritize for staff. For them to know that this is a direction from the council and it's not something we just put in the agenda or put in their line of priorities, which is not what we want to do. We promised that we would work like this, that anytime we agree or want something, it has to come before the council to be voted on and then passed on to staff so that they can allot the necessary time needed to do the work. As she said, this is not a done deal in a month, in 2 months. It may be at the first of the year before they have anything to present to us. And what they're presenting to us, as Councilmember Clark said, is information. They will attempt to answer all of your questions. They will again follow up with all the other cities as to what is it that is valuable information for the council to know and understand as we create the trust fund, so that not just us, but our citizens will know what it is that we're doing at a level that they get it as well. So if you will please vote, committee. Thank you. And the motion passes. Would the city clerk please call the next item?
Item G2, consideration of items related to funding to Habitat for Humanity of Forsyth County, Inc. for development of 13 single-family homes in the Happy Hill neighborhood located in the East Ward.
Ms. Tony.
Yes, thank you. Good evening again. This item came before you last month as an information item. This is for the Habitat for Humanity to build 13 single-family homes in the Happy Hill neighborhood community. These homes would be funded at 100% of using ARPA, state ARPA funds, which the goal there is single-family homes. And this also has an opportunity to free up a restrictive covenant that Housing Authority had on the land and gives the community an opportunity to be a part of future development of Happy Hill, which has remained stagnant for many years. And so this is a little different than our other development deals and gap financing per se. HUD has allowed Habitat for Humanity to be a trusted source that Housing Authority can convey the land to. And so they have conveyed the land to Habitat, and so this provides the resources to Habitat to build the homes. The investment would be $2.158 million.
Any comments or questions? Councilmember Monday, Councilmember Clark.
This may be appropriate after a motion, I'm not sure. This is a comment, and I've said this before, so I'll just reiterate it, that we need to make sure that the residents of Happy Hill are involved in this process, and not just the leaders of that group, because there are others in that community whose voices need to be heard as well. So I would hope that there's a forum or some specific way for everyone in the neighborhood to have their voices heard.
Councilmember Clark.
I expressed it at the last meeting, I'll express it here again. I am very concerned with the way this is set up. We have 3 more resolutions after this. In G3, we're spending $20,000 per home for 45 homes for renovations. G4, we're spending $27,000 per unit, and I think that's 180 apartments, and that's a 2% loan. And G5, we're spending $37,000 per unit, which is approximately 15% of the cost. This, we are granting 100% of the cost to Habitat. That's unsustainable, and it is totally inconsistent with anything we have done. And for that reason, I can't support the way it's done. Now, we do have G6 coming up, which is a revolving loan fund for single-family construction. And it seemed like to me it would make more sense to treat it like those. Those are $100,000 loans per house at a 2% interest to be paid back when the houses are sold. But anyway, we have never paid 100% of the cost of a house, and I'm not ready to start it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scipio.
Yes. First of all, I'm very much in favor of this. That development has been empty of homes for 23 years. They were supposed to have been built in 2000. They weren't. Our housing authority cannot move forward with releasing all of those properties, not just the 13, but there are probably about 40 plus more, until 13 homes are built by HUD. Built for and satisfying HUD. Habitat process, as you are probably familiar, is that they have to raise the monies to build homes that they build. That will take quite a few years using their normal processes to do that. If we had to wait for their processes, we're looking at perhaps 5 years out before that property could be released for building the other sites out. We have in the past paid 100% for loans. We did it with S.G. Atkins, and we funded at that time $125,000 for those homes. And if you remember, I do remember because this was one of the first things that happened when I came on council, is we had to forgive the payback on those homes because they did not sell them for the price of what they put in. I think you might feel uncomfortable about paying 100% for these homes. I'm not sure why, but I do know that that neighborhood has suffered for too many years. We have the money to make this happen. We have the money to release the restrictions from HUD. And we need to do that so that that neighborhood, which is the very first African-American neighborhood of homeowners, and that's important. Home ownership was the intent in 1872 when the Moravian Church platted that land. Home ownership. It wasn't apartments for rent. That didn't come until 1950 when the very first public housing in this city was placed there and displaced homeowners. This section of our community must have homeowners in order for it to be vibrant long-term. That's our responsibility to help that along. That's real leadership, in my opinion, is that we help develop the oldest African-American neighborhood of homeowners in this city. I'm an advocate for that. I would hope that the rest of my council members would advocate for that because there's so much potential on the east side of town that was destroyed over the years from policies made by municipalities and government. So I'm certainly in favor of that, and I hope others would be as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark, then Councilmember Monday, then Councilmember McIntosh.
Just real briefly, one of my concerns is this money isn't going to the homeowners. It's going to Habitat as a grant. Homeowners are still going to have a mortgage, probably a fairly large one. I don't know. We weren't given that information. But this money isn't going to the homeowners. It's going to the builder. And I think we could come up with a better format for this than what's being proposed. Why do I not like it? If we were to do every house in Happy Hills this way, we would need over probably about $million. It's just an astronomical amount of money. We have to leverage our money, and that's why I mentioned here, G5, we're paying $37,000 per unit. It's 15% of the cost. We're leveraging that 15 to 85. What's that, 5 times? 1 to 5 ratio. Here, we're not getting any leverage, and none of the money's going to the homeowners. It's going to Habitat. That's all I'll say.
Councilmember Monday, then Councilmember McIntosh.
For all the reasons that Councilmember Scipio mentioned, this neighborhood has been sometimes neglected, sometimes misled. I think that we do owe that neighborhood this option. And we look at Habitat, I look at Habitat as a trusted partner and even an advisor at times, because they're boots on the ground when it comes to housing. So I would have no problem doing this without feeling that we're setting a precedent. ARPA money is not a precedent. So we know that this is probably a kind of a one-time or an out-of-the-ordinary way of financing.
Councilmember McIntosh.
I would just point out that for every home built under this financing proposal, we could have sent 5 more homes. And I know there was a deal on the table before this deal that would release Hawes from their HUD agreement. My understanding was that would be 27 homes on these same parcels of land. So the way the financing is set up on this, our $160,000, to my understanding, acts like a construction loan to Habitat. When a home is completed and the buyer steps forward, the buyer takes out a new mortgage, and those funds go back to Habitat. So the buyer's going to pay the same price. The benefit is not going to the buyer, it's going to Habitat. Love Habitat, have worked with them, support them, go to their meetings looking for ways to raise money. This is not fair to the rest of the community that needs housing. This is, to me, a backdoor reparations. If we want to have a conversation about reparations, which I think we should, let's do that, but let's not try to achieve that through a very limited pool of money that we have for housing.
And maybe I'm wrong, I did hear that there were conversations, Ms. Tony, of another possibility of another plan option for the council or the city. And I don't know whether that's true or not. I never heard the specifics, but from what I heard, and it could have been the street drums, telling me that there could be another way to make this happen without us having to give all of this money. And as Councilmember Clark and McIntosh said, that we can ensure that the buyers at least get something. I mean, if it's a $160,000 house when it's finished, that mortgage or whatever will probably be on what, $200, $225, whatever. But I think, just like going back to the housing trust, I think some of the council has a little heartburn behind this one. Again, going forward, we want to build houses. We want to try to be as consistent as we can, but we also know that there are others that are asking for gap funding that are doing something different. All of these are different scenarios. So was that true or not? I mean, I'd like for the director of Habitat to come up.
I think that's the question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Red.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, other members of the committee.
And you are?
George Red, 2531 Kingsgate Drive, 27101. I'm George Red. I'm CEO with Habitat. I've been with Habitat since 2011. I've been the CEO for the past year and a half. To date, Habitat Forsyth has built 426 single-family homes throughout Forsyth County in almost 40 years. During that time, we have proven to be a trusted entity, as you just said, Councilmember Mundy. Families that complete the Habitat Homeownership Program not only move into single-family homes, but they learn skills that help them keep those homes and pass it along to their children. We all know that home ownership is the easiest way to create generational wealth, and in many cases, becoming a homeowner breaks the cycle of generational poverty. We currently have 30 families in our pipeline, and our program is typically 18 to 24 months. Without that time and without the time and change of mindset, families wouldn't be successful homeowners. Families are educated in financial literacy, home maintenance, and how to be a good neighbor. This is the model we have been following since 1986. It gives a family a fair chance of becoming a successful homeowner. These classes are also important because it gives them tools in the mindset to be successful. Families are taught that they can no longer rely on the maintenance man when they have a problem. We teach them those maintenance skills so that they can repair that leaky faucet, learn how to repair a drywall, hang a ceiling fan, or either how to install laminate flooring. We also teach them financial literacy skills that will help them make sure that their credit is where it needs to be. We encourage them to pull their credit report yearly. I'd also like to say that children in Habitat homes are also taught these skills as well. As I've stood here today and listened to everything, I guess I'll be honest if I said I wasn't disappointed some. Because if we've been around for close to 40 years and trying to build safe and affordable housing, with what we have a housing crisis going on across our country, and our state isn't faring so well. And when I talk to my partners throughout the community and other habitats across the state, they receive a lot of funding from their city. They receive a lot of funding from their county. I know the county is a different ballgame. We're trying to work on that, but I think it's about building relationships, but also, let's be honest, if that land has been sitting vacant for 23 years, and when we spoke to Executive Director Kevin Cheshire, he said, hey, I know you were in the business of helping families get out of generational poverty. I said, Kevin, we would love to build more safe and affordable housing. So what we're having here today is it sounds like we're gonna have to come back again and wait longer and longer to try and get more families on that land that has been sitting vacant for 23 years. And it's just disappointing because if we know we have an affordable housing crisis, why are we still going around and around about what to do with the funds that are already there? Now, again, this isn't a traditional way of doing things, I understand, but if we're a trusted entity, if we have a very good product, we have 426 families that we can say, look what we've done for them, look how we pulled them out of generational poverty. That's what it's all about, serving families in the community. We had 700 applications picked up maybe 3 weeks ago, and we opened the Habitat Home Ownership Program. We had 200 turned in. Now, as for Happy Hill, we built 18 homes in Happy Hill already. We are pleased to once again partner and continue to work with Happy Hill. Our mission is to build safe and affordable housing, and we've been doing that for quite a while. Our construction model allows us to do that, and we look forward to working with Happy Hill and answering any questions that may be asked.
So, thank you, Mr. Reyes. So, there was never another plan of how we could make this deal work, just like we do with other developers?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Burke.
Thank you. I just want to say, I think this is an opportunity for the city to right some wrongs. I think that when we consider the location, when we consider the history of this location and the fact that we have had 23 lots remain vacant, these lots have remained vacant for 23 years. Now we have an opportunity, and we can go ahead and have these 13 houses built so that the house can be released and we can continue to build more. It is time to build back Happy Hill. It's time to stop talking about what we're going to do, saying, yeah, it needs to be done. Why are we neglecting and leaving behind certain areas in the city, certain communities? So I think that this is a project that we need to support. As Councilmember Mundy said, Habitat is a trusted partner. They have proven themselves. They have been extremely helpful to our citizens. They provide the education, the training, the skills to help to ensure that once these homeowners are in their homes, they will be able to stay. They try to take them through every process and educational opportunity to make sure that they can stay in their homes, and this will provide this help to address this generational poverty. Thank you.
Councilmember McIntosh.
When I was talking about another deal, I wasn't talking about another deal between Habitat and Hawes. I was talking about a deal with another developer that would have put 27 houses on that property that was there in place before this deal surfaced. Okay, so I want to be clear about that. So this is not the only method of doing this. This is not the only method providing more housing. For whatever reason, the housing authority is at a point now where they feel comfortable looking for developers for this piece of property. The city of Winston-Salem has not drugged their feet on this deal. We've not been sitting around for years and years until the moment came right. So the question to me is, how many homes do we want to incent with the money that we have? Now, Habitat wants to come back and talk about dollars per door that were within the parameter of where we're spending all over town. That's a whole different story. But I'm not comfortable. I've written checks alongside Habitat, big ones, right? I don't feel like this is within Habitat's normal way of doing business, personally. Thank you.
Councilmember Scipio.
I'd like to ask, if possible, Mr. Cheshire come up to say why Habitat. Hold on, George.
Okay.
Why are we going with Habitat and other deals won't work?
Mr. Cheshire. And then after we finish this comment, we're going to have to get a motion on the floor.
Thank you. So Habitat helped us finish the Kimberly Park Terrace Hope 6 grant. That was really the genesis for all of this. Habitat being involved allowed us to close out that grant, and then we constructed 15 other homes for the first time in a rent-to-own model known as Brookside View, which was the last phase of Kimberly Park. When we went to HUD, we were trying to figure out a way to release the parcels that are still encumbered. There's a declaration of trust to the benefit of HUD on the majority of those parcels at Happy Hill. We discussed a variety of different options. We ended up coming to an agreement that allowed us to move forward in essentially a three-phased approach. The first phase was to be led by Habitat. What was submitted to HUD was the deed from the Housing Authority to Habitat of the 13 lots at issue. That had to go through a very formal disposition request process, and that was what was approved by HUD. HUD considers that we, meaning the Housing Authority, sort of owes between 10 and 14 replacement units back to HUD. And so that is what is required to be produced before the remaining land can be unencumbered and allow the development of the remaining community. That was the first phase. The second phase is to issue a request for proposals for unencumbered lots. So there are a handful of unencumbered lots, and that request for proposals is on the street, and that is moving forward, and developers are certainly able to respond to that. With respect to sort of other site plans or other concepts for development of these particular 13, there was never anything that was proposed to HUD. The primary reason for that is because if it's Habitat, that is a known entity to HUD. It's known nationally to HUD, and it's known to the group with whom we are working at HUD headquarters because Habitat for Scythe facilitated the completion of the Kimberly Park phases. So if it had been another developer that had submitted a site plan to us, we would have then had to go to HUD. They would have had to get financial due diligence. There would probably have had to have been a competitive RFP to select that developer, whereas Habitat could be sole sourced without any other traditional due diligence that HUD would run on a private developer who was trying to undertake this type of development. So what is essentially owed to HUD is somewhere between 10 and 14 replacement units that they knew Habitat could construct, that we knew Habitat could construct. That would be the tip of this development spear, proverbially speaking. That would then facilitate phase 2 to be built out via a private developer with some workforce housing and sub-market rate housing. And then once Habitat completed the build out of its 13, that would release all the remaining lots for additional housing development.
Councilmember Larson.
And under what conditions is the 13 lots being transferred to HUD, to Habitat? Are they being sold, or are they being given, or what?
They're being given, yes, sir.
They're being given, so they have no cost in the front end?
Correct.
Of that. So they have 13 lots, and they're asking the city to provide the money to actually pay for the construction of the houses now?
Yes, sir.
And then if I could ask one, what happens to the person who wants to live in that house? So how is that price going to be established to transfer that cost of the house? In other words, I guess the question is, who's making money on this, if anybody? And I doubt anybody is, but I just want to clarify it.
I understand. All mortgage terms are set at 30 years with families. So anybody making mortgage terms, you will not pay more than 30%. The national HUD rule, you will not spend more than 30% of your mortgage on your housing payment. I'm sorry, yeah. So by doing that, we make it affordable to the family. Now, earlier, I believe Councilman Clark, you said that the family doesn't get anything. None of the families we work with are able to get a traditional home loan anywhere else. So that's why they come to Habitat, because we make it affordable to them. I'm sorry, does that answer the question?
So how much of the house is being sold to?
Whatever the appraised value is right now.
Right.
And I wouldn't know that until we actually construct the house over in Happy Hill, and we would have to do an appraisal.
So the cost the amount of money that we're giving to Habitat may or may not complete the construction of a house?
I'm really not sure of that, Kelly. And this is our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Kelly.
I'm just trying to understand where the money's going to and where it's coming from. Who's going to pay for what at the end of the day?
Good evening, council members. Yes, Councilmember Larson, we're the cost of construction.
Could we get your name?
I'm sorry, Kelly Mitter, 428 South Sunset Drive, Winston-Salem 27103. I'm the COO with Habitat. So the funding we're talking about tonight is the actual cost of construction of the house. So our current average price for a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath house at this moment is about $145,000. The additional $20,000 that's kind of in this request is based on the fact of whether or not we would build it with a garage, which is something that Councilmember Scipio would like to see happen with these houses. So our typical construction, we do not build garages with our houses unless it's required or requested by the municipality or the zoning regulations in which we build. So as George said, it is appraised value is typically the selling price of the house, but we can't exceed that 30% of household income for the homeowner. So oftentimes we're actually selling those houses for less than the cost of construction and providing a second silent mortgage, if you will, from Habitat. So this is strictly the cost of construction. Is that it? Thanks for your question.
I think I understand that. So the homeowner will actually be buying possibly below the cost of the actual construction of the house.
It'll be either appraised value or less than appraised value based on their income. So we're serving families from essentially 40% area median income to 80% area.
And who do they pay the mortgage to? Is that a private lender?
To Habitat.
You pay it to Habitat.
Yeah,
so
we are the mortgage lender.
So they'll be paying back the cost of construction of the house or the value of the house over a period of 30 years.
Over 30 years, that's correct.
So you can build other houses.
That's correct.
But you're not making any profit on this.
We're a nonprofit, so no.
Right.
In fact, we don't even cover. This doesn't even include the cost of labor in the process as well. It's just material cost of construction.
Thank you.
I know we would like to continue the discussion, but I really need a motion on the floor for the discussion to continue. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve.
Second. Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Discussion, Councilmember McIntosh, and then Councilmember Monday.
I just wanted to ask whether my characterization of how the money flows was accurate, whether Habitat takes the 160 out at the closing of the mortgage, and I see Kelly nodding his head, so I'm assuming that that is correct. So the $100,000, $160,000 the city puts in goes back into Habitat's coffers to go build other houses, but still, that's not in and of itself a benefit to the buyer.
Councilmember Monday.
I don't know who to direct this question to, so I'll just ask, and whoever knows, come up and answer it. If we went with a private developer who is not a nonprofit, would they still have to abide by the not charging more than 30% of the household income?
Mr. Cheshire.
Thank you. So the only approval that we have from HUD now is specific to Habitat. So my first response would be it would have to go back through a formal disposition process. So we'd essentially be starting all over, number one. Number two, it would have to be as to the units that we quote OHUD, meaning what are called replacement units, they have to be affordable. So yes, as to those replacement units, they would have to be capped at 30% of adjusted gross income for the occupants of those homes. They could be rental or home ownership, and we could also do it as part of a larger request for proposals to build out more than just those 13. But at the end of the day, whether we built those replacement units on these 13 lots or on other 13 lots, we would have to have that number of replacement units, which would have to be capped at 30% of that family's adjusted gross income.
And where would that family go to get a mortgage?
So for home ownership, Habitat's essentially the only game in town for us with what we've done.
So if it were a private developer, they would have to go through a bank and probably not qualify.
Right. Now, in concept, I guess you could do it with some sort of subsidy. We have mortgage subsidy, but you'd have to have an existing voucher holder in order to make that work. There would just be a lot of complications, so I don't want to suggest it's impossible. It's just not something I've ever seen before.
And one last question, do any of these private developers offer any type of classes like a first-time home buyer, which would be setting them up for success rather than failure?
Not that I've ever seen. Again, I don't know that they do not, but not that we've ever seen or worked with.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman McIntosh, did you?
I'm okay.
Okay, you good? The vote is up, and just so you know, this is the committee. It goes to council. So, and I don't have an issue with council members flushing out their concerns and asking as many questions as they want, because this we named is our priority. And every time one of these projects come, it is going to be like this. And I want everyone to understand on the council, no one is against building housing in any community in this city. I'm saying that because the name of the game and what we're attempting to do is ensure that we are building, and we agreed on it, housing for everybody. Our focus, yes, is affordable housing, but working people need housing, veterans need housing, seniors need housing, disabled need housing. So with that, would you please vote? And the motion passes, and it'll go to council. Thank you very much.
I do. That's fine.
Next item, please, City Clerk.
Item G3, consideration of items related to a Choice Neighborhood Grant from the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem, authorized by U.S. Housing and Urban Development to implement the Residential Facade Improvement Program located in the Northeast Ward.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. I'm Samuel Hunter, Assistant Neighborhood Services Director. I'm here to talk to you about accepting some funds for a residential facade improvement program in the Northeast and East Ward. This is associated with the Choice Neighborhood Initiative Grant, and this program is 100% grant funded. So in 2020, as you all know, we received the CNI grant in partnership with the Housing Authority for $30 million to do a transformation grant. In that $30 million grant, $4 million is set aside for critical community improvements, so that's revitalization efforts. We targeted three they call it CCIs. We have three of them. One is residential improvement. The next one is commercial improvements along Liberty Street and in that boundary, and then arts and placemaking is the third one. So this is the first CCI improvement that I'm bringing to you all for your approval or for your consideration. So this program, we launched this program in July. We had 2 meetings. We had over 90 people in attendance at these meetings. We've received over 45 applications for this program. All these applicants are located in the east and northeast ward in the CNI boundary. They are in good standing. They all are owner-occupied structures, and they're current on all taxes and don't have any code violations or anything like that. This program is to provide some better curb appeal in the neighborhood and provide residents with the opportunity to make much needed repairs to their home. As we know, a lot of the homes in the east and northeast wards, specifically in the CNI boundary, may not look the best. So we're trying to make this a better curb appeal and make sure that people can benefit from this program. So with this funds, each home has a limit of $20,000 worth of improvements. So the improvements cannot exceed $20,000 worth of improvement. That includes the markup for the contractors, 10%. We built in a $5,000 contingency just in case of change orders or any unexpected events that may occur during the improvement of these homes. Again, this is 100% grant funded through the CNI grant, $20,000 limit per home. We've been working with some contractors. All of them are good standing with the city, have a good track record. We vetted them. They're existing vendors. They already do some things for the city right now. So we've made sure that, we can trust these contractors that we're working with. Also working with home inspectors to make sure that they can provide home inspections for the selected applicants in this program. So they'll do external inspections of the home, provide them with a full report. Now, on that report, all of the listed improvements may not be eligible for repair or may be cost prohibitive, but the homeowner will have that information, so if they choose to do something in the future, they can do that. But we wanted to make sure that we could take care of that home inspection as well. So approval of this resolution and the PBO, the project budget ordinance, accepts the CNI's funds for the grant amount of $895,000 to implement the residential facade improvement program funded through the Choice Neighborhood Initiative program.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Clark for Mr. Hunter.
I'll address this to Ms. Tony. We did, and I think it was through the TURN program, we did some rehab work, and some of the contractors did less than stellar work. I trust we're not using them again.
No, sir, we're not using them.
And there is I did the quick math. If we approve this, and I think you've got a $20,000 cap, that comes out to 45 homes. That sound right?
Yes, sir, that's exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Burke, and then Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much, and a great question from Councilmember Clark. They have thoroughly vetted these contractors so that we will not run into those problems from the past. I want to say that in this community, in this area, the East Ward and the Northeast Ward, a huge financial investment is already being made for Choice. Millions of dollars are being spent right here in these two communities for Choice, and it is only fitting that we continue to extend right across the street from Choice revitalization efforts for owner-occupied residents. So when we had the community meetings, like you said, standing room only. The residents are so excited and they are so grateful for this opportunity to revitalize the aesthetics of the exterior of their homes. So I'm just very proud of the city for doing this and for us to be able to help in this way.
Councilmember Scipio.
Thank you. Mr. Hunter, we've already approved 45 homes, is that right?
We have 45 applications, so we've approved 22 homes for this first phase of this program.
Okay.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Is the total amount allocated for the facade program this 895, or are there other funds or more applications?
So as of right now, we are accepting $895,000 specifically for this program. Now, this program will be successful, so if we have some other funds, that don't get used in the future, we could potentially do a budget amendment for HUD to get some more funds for this in the future.
But we've allocated, it's a total of $4 million?
Yes, $4 million in total for the critical community improvements.
And of that, how much have we spent so far? Have we spent money other than this $895?
No, this is the first chunk
It's
that we're.
first.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have other funds for the commercial and the arts aesthetics?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
When the city of Winston-Salem was where we were pursuing the third choice grant, one of the things that I made it clear to the developers and the partners, McCormick Barron and all of the others, and HUD, and this is like 6 years ago, I told them, because we had already began collaborations with Everyone Homes and some studies, again, all these studies that we did, that preservation and restoration are primary in affordable homes. If you're not restoring and preserving the ones that you have, or the ones in neighborhoods that we haven't been able to do anything for. But when choice came along, part of that deal was if you do just Cleveland and you don't do anything else, then we're going to get the same results. So it was suggested, we suggested that there be something built in, that we are able to rehab, restore, and preserve surrounding homes that lead into Cleveland, whether that's Cleveland, 14th, Liberty, or other streets around it, so that people will be able to see in the neighborhood, will be able to be very proud that we just didn't put paint on the new part, but we are actually doing things to improve the whole community as we go forward. So I will be supporting this. May we have a motion, please?
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded, and would you please vote? Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you.
City Clerk, next item, please.
Item G4, resolution authorizing funding to Winfield Forward LLC for development of the residences at Indiana Avenue, located in the North Ward.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, Mayor Joines, other members of the committee and council. I'm Tanya Skillman, Housing Development Manager. This item was presented last month as for informational purposes, as an information item. Winfield Properties, also known as Winfield Forward, request gap financing in the amount of $4,850,000 of ARPA revenue replacement funds to develop 180 units known as the residences at Indiana Avenue. The terms of the loan will be 30 years at 2%. The project will consist of 27 one-bedroom units, 81 two-bedroom, and 72 three-bedroom units. The rents will range from 30% to 80% area median income for each. I can give the ranges for the bedroom cost. The rents that they're proposing are for the one bedrooms, $389 to $1,101. The two-bedroom apartments rents will range from $473 to $1,387, and the three-bedroom apartments will range from $544 to $1,594.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman. Any questions or comments? Again, we discussed this to death.
Approval.
Last month. Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. And the motion is approved. Next item, City Clerk.
Item G5, presentation on the proposed project at Esquire Place, 22 three-bedroom, two-bath modular homes with garages development located in the North Ward.
I don't know why I sat down.
I don't either. I was was like, where's she going? Thank you.
Clayton Homes proposes to build 22 three-bedroom, two-bath modular homes on a city-owned lot at Esquire Place in the North Ward. The project will be adjacent to an established subdivision and developed pursuant to a site plan that has received preliminary approval. The lot is appropriately zoned for its intended use. To offset current market conditions, the lot will be sold to Clayton Homes for $1 and along with an allocation of $824,000 of state ARPA funds in the form of a forgivable loan. The assistance will be passed on to buyers to reduce the sales prices. Qualified buyers can access home buyer assistance programs to achieve additional savings. Lots will be sold to approved qualified buyers prior to the start of construction, providing buyers with the opportunity to select from design options.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Gilman, also, could you guys bring up the design while Councilmember Scipio asks her question, then Councilmember McIntosh?
This question is for Assistant City Manager Aaron King. These are modular homes. Is there a difference in whether something's called modular, pre-engineered, or prefabbed? How do we look, and is a modular home the equivalent of a single-family home?
So, Councilmember Scipio, there's a lot of confusion sometimes around what we call modular homes and what we call manufactured homes. So the easiest way to say this is that modular homes are built to and meet the state building code, the same as a stick-built home does. They're built to the same exact code. Mm-hmm. The only difference there is really the construction method used to assemble that home. Manufactured homes, what are traditionally called single wides or double wides, do not meet the state building code. They meet HUD's building code. So there's a difference in construction quality between a manufactured home and a stick-built or modular home. So again, modular homes are treated the same as stick-built homes with respect to the code and for zoning purposes.
Thank you. And I do have one question for Ms. Stillman. This is the acreage is for $1. What is the acreage on this site?
7.2, I believe.
Acres?
Yes.
And the developer is here from Clayton, if anyone would have any questions for them.
It's 22 lots, by the way.
Not for him, no.
Councilmember McIntosh.
I'm going to be the fly in the punch bowl here. Why do we bother setting dollar per door estimates and guidelines and policies if we're just going to exceed them at every turn? $77,000 a door is not what this council has been, the model that we've been working on. So no problem with the product. The industry has not done a good job over the years differentiating between manufactured and modular and everything else. So I don't have any problem with that at all. But the cost to us of $77,000 a door means we can build less housing that people need.
It's not.
It's not. It's 37,000.
Yeah, it's 38.
I thought it was 77.
It's 22.
37.
All right, take it back.
You was ready, weren't you?
I'll admit when I'm wrong.
Councilmember Clark, you have
You say it's 37 a house, and these houses are going to sell. Are you with Clayton Homes back there?
Yes, Scott.
These are
Scott Hicks.
275, 250, something like that, 300.
Scott Hicks, Clayton Homes,
What are they going to sell for approximately?
230 to 240.
Okay. thank you.
230,000.
Yeah,
My apologies.
okay. And we're paying about a 15% subsidy. Thank you, that's all.
Do we have the presentation that shows the square footage of the examples that you guys showed me? If you don't, it's okay. You can.
It doesn't have the square footage on it.
No, I'm sorry. No, I didn't.
Okay,
include that.
could staff make that available, send it out to all of the council members so they can see? All of the houses are over 1,000 and up in square footage there. The bedrooms are 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. What did we say today, this morning?
3 bedrooms, 2
3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
He may know the square foot. Sir, do you know the square footage?
Yes, sir. We've offered 3 different floor plans, 1,400 square foot and up to about 1,800.
Okay, 14, 18, okay. Thank you.
And I welcome you guys to come look at them.
And they will take us on a tour of their facility so you can get an up-close and personal experience of what it takes to build these houses. Councilmember Mundy.
Just help me acclimate myself. Is this in Old Town? Is that where this is?
Yeah, Indiana.
The area, I'm just trying, I can't quite tell from the map.
Old Town is
It's right off Renolda Road.
Okay.
I'm new to the area.
Close to Old Town School.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments? Again, this is information only, and it'll be coming back, is it next month or next month? Yes. Next month. Thank you so much. Next item, City Clerk.
Item G6, presentation on creation of revolving construction loan fund of $2 million to provide gap financing for housing rehabilitation and the development of infill housing.
Mr. Gilman.
Yes. So this is an opportunity to support investment in affordable housing while supporting small business developers and nonprofits through the creation of a $2 million construction loan fund with an allocation of home and state ARPA funds. The loan fund will be used to finance smaller affordable home ownership projects consisting of 10 units or less. The loan amounts must be less than $100,000. The term for the loans would range from 12 to 18 months. Proceeds can be used for the development of new construction or preservation projects. Constructed homes would be subject to the 15-year affordability period pursuant to the Housing Act, and the terms, again, would be 12 to 18 months at 2%.
Councilmember Clark, Councilmember Scipio.
This is just for information only.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
y'all be back next month. I think you need to put some more meat on the bones, just some thoughts. I would want them to actually apply with a form.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give this money to somebody that's never built a house. I want to be sure they have experience. Also want to see their financial stack. Do they have the wherewithal to do this? And then what type of, are we going to reimburse? Are they going to show us invoices they're paid and we reimburse it? I think we need to add a lot of meat to the bones. This is typical construction financing that we would carry until the house is sold. The new owner takes out a mortgage from a bank, pays and I would assume we would be paid off at closing.
Yes, sir, that's correct, and I agree wholeheartedly. That would be experienced
I have no trouble
developers.
with it, but we just need to put the meat on the bones. Thank you.
Councilmember, there's somebody else, Scipio, Councilmember Scipio.
First of all, would you, just for the record, correct the number?
2 million.
It's 2 million, because those zeros are a little
Yes.
confusing there.
It was super shock.
And this is just a technical question. Is this seen as a very different fund than the Housing Trust Fund?
Yes, ma'am.
Could it not be part of the Housing Trust Fund?
Well, I think that
I'm just concerned that we have all these different funds, but we don't know how they all connect. And I would really love for us to have a vision and a plan for how we're going to spend all of the ARPA money we've set aside for affordable housing, all of the different tools in our toolkit. But that's why it was a little confusing to me.
Ms. Tony.
Yes, thank you. I just want to mention, yes, it can. The source of these funds, though, or half of them, would come from home funds. So we have a regular allocation. These are federal funds that are earmarked really for rehab purposes. That's an eligible use, and many of these individual small developers don't have the resources that they need. What you all just moved forward for full approval are big developers, right? Winfield is a big developer. Clayton Homes is bigger. So these individual, where we have scattered sites in particular and these vacant lots, there's some opportunities for developers that are trying to get their foot in the game to help in the affordable housing space, and this revolving loan will allow us to do that internally. So we never envision home funds maybe going to a pot for the housing trust fund, maybe other types of funding, but this would be something we would manage for sure internally.
I would also like to see, and I think it's kind of what Councilmember Clark said, I don't have an issue allowing the city manager to approve it, but because it's housing, it needs to come to this committee.
Okay.
We need to know who is getting the money, you know, just like we do for other contractors, okay? Any other comments or questions? This is for information, and we'll see this again as well. All right, thank you so much. This meeting is now adjourned. One more thing, excuse me. Good of the order. Councilmember Scipio reminded me that we have a new member at the clerk's office, and now just like how they say on television, on The Voice and stuff, the city clerk's office is full.
Yay.
Staffed. City clerk, who is, would you introduce?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor joins committee, members of the committee. We have now Allison Glenn. She's our new senior administrative assistant. We're very happy and lucky to have her. She comes to us from California with some city clerk experience from California. So she also had Granicus experience. So we really do feel like we are fully staffed now. So thank you all for your patience. And I know she looks forward to helping us serve you all and the community.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, we adjourn.